placement. Private placement is an offering of securities by a company in an effort to raise capital that is made privately to a limited number of investors. This type of offering is exempt from the registration requirements under the federal securities laws. In contrast, a public securities offering must typically be registered with the SEC, but under certain circumstances, both public and private offerings are allowed without registration. Question 1. Private placement offering is exempt from the registration requirements under the federal securities laws. True or false? To qualify, the company issuing the securities must claim a registration exemption under the federal securities laws. There are mainly 4 possible exemptions. 1. 3 rules under Regulation D of the Securities Act of 1933. 2. Section 4.2 of the Securities Act. 3. The Act's Regulation S and 4. SEC Rule 147. Question 2. There are 4 rules under Regulation D of the Securities Act of 1933. True or false? Regulation D. It has 3 rules that allow offerings to be conducted without registration as long as the related requirements are met. 504 governs offerings that raise up to $1 million. Then Rule 505 is for up to $5 million and Rule 506 has no limit. Rule 504 does allow for non-restricted securities to be issued in limited circumstances, but securities sold under Rules 505 and 506 are restricted. This means they can only be resold if certain conditions are met. Question 3. Rule 505 governs offerings that raise up to $5 million. True or false? Most securities offered under Regulation D are bought by an accredited investor. A natural person's net worth needs to be above $1 million, or have at least $200,000 in income over the last year. If the person has a spouse, their joint income would have to be at least $300,000 over the last year. Question 4. An accredited investor, a natural person's net worth needs to be above $5 million. True or false? Rule 504 generally allows for the participation of an unlimited number of non-accredited investors, but the other 2 rules limit the number to 35. In terms of promoting an offering, Rule 504 allows the use of general solicitation to reach potential investors. Rules 505 and 506 cannot use general solicitation. This means offers cannot be made through advertisements, seminars, meetings, or cold calling. Question 5. Rule 504 allows for the participation of an unlimited number of non-accredited investors. True or false? Another exemption that can be used for private placements is Section 4.2 of the Securities Act of 1933. Typically this type of offering is made to a very limited number of investors, so it can limit the amount an issuer can raise. Securities issued under this exemption are restricted, and general solicitation is prohibited. Under this exemption, investors with sufficiently large asset holdings and experience to understand and even negotiate the terms of the transaction. Question 6. Section 4.2 is one of the private placements exemptions. True or false? To determine if an offering qualifies to use a Section 4.2 exemption, review the number of people offered the securities, their relationship, the size of the offering, and the way it is offered. Generally, the lower the number of parties receiving an offer, the smaller the offering size. Question 7. The size of the offering under Section 4.2 is not based on the number of parties. True or false? Regulation S is an exception from registration that an issuer can rely on. It can be used for offshore offerings, meaning those done outside of the United States, but the offering cannot be advertised to anyone in the U.S. and the issuer and broker-dealer cannot sell directly to people in the U.S. It's important to note that restrictions related to offering limits and accredited investor status does not apply to Regulation S offerings. Question 8. Regulation S is an exception used for offshore offerings. True or false? Last, I will mention SEC Rule 147. To use it, the offering must be made and sold only to residents of a particular state, and the issuer must either be a resident of the state through its incorporation there, or the location of its principal office. It could also be deemed to be doing business within the state, which would be true if the issuer gets at least 80% of its revenues from assets within that same state. A securities offering under the Rule 147 exemption can use general solicitation, and is not restricted, but there is one requirement. For 9 months after the issuer's offering, any resale of those securities must be to a resident of the particular state or territory where they were issued. Question 9. SEC Rule 147 offering must be made and sold only to residents of a particular state. True or false? Let's now turn to the rules governing the resale of securities that were originally bought through a private placement. Rule 144 allows the resale of restricted securities under certain conditions. How the resale can happen depends in part on whether the seller is an affiliate or not. If the issuer has the ability to exert influence over the seller, or control it, then the seller is an affiliate. Question 10. Rule 144 allows the resale for all affiliates. True or false? If the issuer is a reporting company that files forms with the SEC, like a 10K or 10Q, and the seller is not an affiliate, then the seller must hold the restricted securities for 6 months. After that time, the seller can sell them without any other limitations, since the securities are no longer restricted and are freely tradable. If the issuer does not file reports with the SEC, then the seller must hold the securities for 1 year instead of 6 months. Question 11. If the issuer does not file reports with the SEC, then the seller must hold the securities for 1 year instead of 6 months. True or false? If the seller is an affiliate, regardless of whether the issuer reports or not, Rule 144 places significant limitations on the person selling those securities. This could include limits on the amount of shares sold, and their manner of sale, as well as a Form 144 filing requirement. For a reporting company, the affiliate selling the securities has a 6-month holding period before they can sell any of the securities. And for a non-reporting company, it's a 1-year period before the affiliate can sell. Question 12. For a reporting company, the affiliate selling the securities has a 9-month holding period before they can sell any of the securities. True or false? Rule 144 is an exemption that can be used in the resale of restricted securities. To understand this rule, it is important to know that it applies only to situations where the buyer is a particular type of institution, like those with investments of at least $100 million. The rule has only a few limitations on securities sales to these buyers, but unlike Rule 144, once the securities are sold, they remain restricted. Question 13. Rule 144 is an exemption for institutional investors only. True or false?